Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the CDL podcast channel. In this episode today, Brock and I are going to be talking about the few confirmed rosters, maybe a rumored one or two that have come up. We finally do have a couple more that are confirmed, especially OpTic. We all know Boston, kind of under the radar, announced their full roster, kind of got swept up by OpTic announcing, as pretty much anything does in the Call of Duty scene. There's a rumor for another roster or two. Hecz throwback tournament is coming up. We're going to talk about that and just talk about some more random miscellaneous news. Probably going to be a shorter episode today because we decided, you know what? We're preparing more segments for the future. We're just going to talk about the roster news, maybe take 20 or 30 minutes or whatever to cover those, and then get you guys out of here with a shorter episode. That's kind of how it's going to be in the off season. There might just be some shorter episodes because that's just kind of the point of the season we're at. We're getting into that lull like we always talk about. So we appreciate the support. If you guys enjoy this one, be sure to leave a like, comment, and subscribe. If you're on the audio platforms, drop that follow, drop that 5-star review. We appreciate your guys' continued support during the off season. As we know, it's maybe not as interesting for you guys to consume Call of Duty content at this time, but we truly do appreciate the support. Without further ado, let's get into this one. Brock, how are you doing today?
Oh, good old Monday. Yeah. Today's good, so a little more roster news like you just said. But other than that, work born as usual. Let's get into the news, I guess.
Yeah, we got OpTic announcing always makes for, I guess, a more exciting day. I was on a travel day coming back home yesterday, so we couldn't hop on and do an instant reaction to the OpTic roster news. Not that it was as much of a thing that we wanted to hop on and do because, well, it was known for weeks now, basically what the roster was. It was just a matter of time before they made it official. So we knew about it. And it was something that we weren't shocked to see. It wasn't some breaking news. It wasn't like when Scump retired in the middle of the season, or OpTic made a surprise move and benched Illy. Wasn't one of those shocking because we kind of knew it was coming. So let's talk about that. First one, let's lead off with it. It's what everybody wants to hear about. It's OpTic. They announced the roster of Dashy, Kenny, Pred, and Shotzzy, which, like I said, we all knew was coming. I guess initial thoughts on the roster, we've kind of talked about it already, so it's not groundbreaking, but I think we feel pretty similar about this roster, and we could talk about it a little bit more in detail after we get your thoughts, but there's just I'm already gonna have to start my train of defending Kenny against the green wall for the year, because there's just a weird amount of negativity I've seen around the roster that I just don't understand.
Yeah. Personally, I think Kenny is a better fit than Jaza. Overall, I just didn't know how likely Kenny was to leave. At the first point.
Better than Sib, I think, too.
Yeah, definitely better than Sib. Kenny brings a lot more than just the gun skill. IGL, VODs, comms.
Yeah. I feel like if you're building, if you're building more around a superstar, sure, Sib would be a good play because he has that takeover potential. Not that Kenny doesn't, but Sib, a little younger, a little more takeover potential. But I feel like Kenny has more what this team needs because they don't need more kills. We talked about it a million times, and for whatever reason, and I'll talk about the main thing I saw there. And don't get me wrong, there's a lot of support for Kenny. A lot of people were gassing it up. A lot of people like the roster move. It's not like it was just all negative. There's a lot of support for it too. But I saw a lot of people saying inconsistency, and I just don't understand. Kenny is, to me, what this team needed. Does that mean it's going to work out perfectly and they're going to win every event and they're going to win champs? I'm going to go on a limb and say they're not going to win every single event next year. Who knows? Maybe they only win one. Maybe they don't even win one. I don't know. COD is weird and inconsistent, and you never know how things are going to shake out. But I don't understand how you can't think Kenny at least has a very good chance to be a good fit, because he's exactly what they need. A team with Pred, Shotzzy, and Dashy doesn't need another guy to go drop a 1.1. Kenny, guess what? Kenny could drop a 1.1 or a 1.2 whenever he wants to. He's that good, but he's more willing to be a gap filler. And I would think, as people, OpTic fans would know better than anybody what Kenny brings to this team, because he is going to fill a Karma type role if you're comparing it to what all OpTic fans would like to reference, because all OpTic fans just want a team that's as good as the OpTic Dynasty was. Arguably the greatest Call of Duty team of all time. And in Kenny, I'm not saying Kenny's as good as Karma, but that's the role he's going to play. Because, I've always said it, Pred reminds me a lot of Scump's playstyle. They're very similar players. I always thought that watching Pred, plays a little bit slower, a little bit more pre-aim heavy. He loves to lay down. he just reminded me a lot of Scump, and you've got Shotzzy playing a really aggressive role. There's not much parallel for Shotzzy on the Dynasty team, obviously.
Yeah. Nope.
There's really no player that played like Shotzzy on the team at all. But you've got your two really aggressive superstar subs, superstar slayers. Dashy a lot like a formal in a way that he's going to drop numbers. He's going to get a lot of kills. He's going to shoot extremely straight. And he's going to drop those numbers. And somebody's got to, take a step back in the slaying department and fill in all the gaps and do all the dirty work. And Kenny is more than willing to do that. He's going to do that. I don't understand how OpTic fans can't see that fit of where he could be. And like I said, maybe the potential doesn't hit, and maybe he doesn't end up panning out for this roster, because that's always a possibility with any roster.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I just don't understand how you can't see the vision of how he could be the perfect fit.
Yeah. And to add to your points, really, Kenny usually, once gets layered in the season, he shows up when it matters most.
Yep. You can always count on him in that moment, which is a very underrated trait that you don't think of. You just think of how good a player is, and you don't think of the other aspects, but it's a very underrated trait to have a guy that always shows up when you need him, and you can always count on it. Because you don't realize how important it is until the guy doesn't show up, and then you get eliminated.
Yeah. And from what I've heard from just watching videos, is that he will hold his teammates accountable.
Yeah, absolutely. And I will say one other thing, whether it's the community, just like the general fans, whether it's us, whether it's former pros, whether it's current pros or talent that has, is a former pro or whatever. Usually when you see a roster move happen and a lot of the community maybe is criticizing it, but all former pros and current pros are saying it's good, I tend to go to the side of the former pros and the people that have played the game at a higher level, because I hate to break it to everyone, but a mind like an Octane or a Nameless, and people like to roast Nameless, but he played Call of Duty at the highest level and won multiple events. He knows what he's talking about.
Sure does, with one thumb.
Yeah. No, not enable, Nameless.
Oh, Nameless, you said?
Yeah, Nameless.
I thought you said enable.
No, Nameless, but enable too.
All right.
But he was tweeting about how this roster is going to be nasty. Octane is saying this roster is going to be nasty. And, once again, could they be wrong? Sure. But I'm going to tend to go with the side of Octane and Nameless and other former pros when talking about a roster or when listening to advice on a roster than I am with you and I or the general community. These guys know the game better than we do and better than the community does, because they've played at the highest level and won events at the highest level and that kind of thing. So with all these former pros gassing up the roster, I believe it is going to be a good roster. And I'm going to defend Kenny this whole year. It's going to be a fun little segment on the podcast.
Yep. I'll be defending him too, since, it's my boy right there. One of my boys.
Yeah.
On paper, this seems good, but we'll have to wait
very
and see
good.
How it plays
and like
out.
we said, you can never guarantee your roster is going to be good. There is always a chance something goes wrong with the roster and things just don't click. Even with Faze, Faze, do we think they're going to be insane? Yes, I think they're going to be insane. And I think Faze is probably going to win multiple events next year. But is there a slight chance that there's maybe chemistry issues or something doesn't work out? Of course, there's always a chance.
Yep.
That something doesn't work out. On the side of the rest of this whole move, though, Pred kind of leaked something. I don't even know if he was supposed to leak it, and then they said screw it, and I think they doubled down and talked about it. And I saw they uploaded a game chat video, their podcast with the team. I haven't seen it yet. But I did hear on Scump's watch party where they revealed the roster that apparently Dashy was supposed to go to Seattle midseason as part of the Pred deal. And it was supposed to be Lamar gets dropped, Dashy takes his spot. I would assume with Sib and Mac, and they probably would have maybe called up Gwyn or something, or picked up somebody else. I didn't hear what they said would have happened, but Seattle fumbled the bag. They got no money for Pred, and they didn't get Dashy.
Fumbled hard twice.
Yeah. Probably could have got a record-breaking buyout and Dashy, who would be under control, because I believe he signed a new deal already, so he would have been under team control for this season as well, and they would have had their superstar to build around, plus cash for Pred. And instead, they have no cash for Pred and no Dashy.
Instead, they wanted to play out the season. Look how that went. It was chalk basically from that point on when the Pred rumors were coming out.
Yeah, so a brutal turn of events and kind of a crazy ripple effect, because obviously we've heard that Rambo's joining Seattle, and kind of crazy what the ripple effect could have been. Pred would have came here. Who knows? Maybe Rambo doesn't ever leave, because I think his main issue was with Dashy. And even if he had left at the time, he probably wouldn't be going to Seattle, because I can't imagine Dashy and Rambo want to work together again. So then all of a sudden Rambo wouldn't have been going to Seattle if Dashy was there. Just crazy how the ripple effect of that could have changed a lot of the things we've seen this offseason.
Yeah. They could have had Dashy. Oh, man. Instead, they get money, no Dashy. For free?
Yeah. Could have been a player they could have built around. Like, it's insane.
Oh, man. What is that management doing up there?
Yeah, that's brutal. So that's about it on the OpTic roster, unless you got anything else. It's just I'll be interested to see how it plays out because once again, it doesn't even really matter what happens. Kenny will be the scapegoat no matter what, because Dashy and Shotzi have just been on the roster so long that they're at this point ingrained into the OpTic culture, and basically nobody's going to roast them unless they're like literally dropping 0.6s every map.
Yeah.
Nobody's going to roast them, and Pred has been like the golden child that all OpTic fans wanted for the last 8 months. So they're not going to roast him, and it kind of leaves Kenny. And as weird as it sounds, I'm not saying that they're going to place the same or like in any other way they're similar to the Faze trio, except the fact that I have a feeling kind of like the Faze trio has been together for 3, 4, 5 years now.
Wow.
I have a feeling that this trio is probably going to basically stick together until one of them retires. The Dashy, Shotzi, Pred trio, I think, is basically going to become like the Faze trio, where they're probably going to stick together until one of them retires. So whoever their fourth is at any time is probably always going to be a scapegoat. And for the foreseeable future, that happens to be Kenny. So I think Kenny's got thick enough skin that he can handle all that criticism. But I just have a weird feeling that this trio on OpTic is going to be like the Faze trio, only in the fact that they're going to stick together for a really long time. And whoever their fourth is going to be in for a lot of criticism.
Yeah, definitely. Since these players are all super good.
Yeah. And the fourth player with these three is always going to be the guy that's filling gaps and is probably not going to have the best stats because he's doing all the dirty work to let the other three shine. And I think, like we said, fans are so in love with Dashy and Shotzi because they've been there forever, and Pred is the golden child. So that kind of leaves Kenny as the odd man out that's probably going to receive a lot of criticism, whether it's warranted or not.
Yeah. I mean, I guess some OpTic fans might still hate Kenny for, Kenny basically owns OpTic.
Yeah, basically since, I can't remember as much in World War II. OpTic just wasn't as good in World War II, and Kenny was on like the best team for a lot of the game. Yeah. But yeah, from BO4 on the Thieves days on, it was rough out there for OpTic when they played Kenny, and specifically basically whenever Kenny was on Thieves.
Yeah. So it's good to get one of those people on your team.
Yeah, just you can't beat them, just bring them to your team.
Yep, just buy them out and bring them. Name whatever you want.
Yeah. Let's talk about one of Kenny's, or two of Kenny's former teammates, I guess. Slasher and Priesta. Boston's roster is finalized. They brought on somebody that I was very, very high on, that I really wanted them to bring on. I didn't think they would do it, honestly, because he was one of their former players that they had benched before and, gotten rid of before, but I'm extremely happy they did it. Boston announced the final roster of Slasher, Priesta, Snoopy, and their fourth of Capsidal. So I think everybody's going to know what my thoughts on this team are, but I want to hear what you think about it. Do you like it? Do you not like it? Are you kind of neutral on it?
I do like it. Like you said, for some reason, I just didn't think like you said, they weren't going to pick up Capsidal. But he does have the upside. And Snoopy is basically going to have to, basically the Hydra, kind of like, maybe not so much, but.
You think? I almost feel like it's going to be the other way around. I think Snoopy's going to be the guy, running in first, kind of playing that aggressive role, and Capsule's going to play more of the Slayer role.
I've actually thought it would be the other way around, but maybe.
Think so? I mean, I feel like either of them could play either role, so I don't think you're wrong. I don't really think there's like a definitive way. I think
they'll mesh well.
Yeah, I think based on what we've heard about, like the Snoopy potentially being compared to Shotzi and being really fast, he could be like an entry player, but I think Capsule could also do that role as well.
Yeah. But for Slasher and Priesta, it's pretty solid AR duo for what was left.
Yeah. I think there's like something to be said, and I keep saying it, and I feel like we need to keep reminding people based on what I've seen for reactions. The top 4 is loaded. Like we've already mentioned, basically the top 4 teams took the 2 top players from the 5th team and the 6th team and absorbed them. So the top players from the 5th and 6th teams that carried them into 5th and 6th got absorbed into the top 4. So all of the top 4 teams just got even better. And I don't understand what people want the teams outside of New York, Toronto, OpTic, and Faze to do. It's like they expect them to put together a roster on that level. But when 16 of the top players are already gone onto the top 4, it's going to be really hard to put together a roster that on paper instantly is like, yeah, that team's as good as the top 4.
Mm-hmm.
I don't necessarily think this team is as good as the top 4, but I think they could potentially be the best team outside of that. And I liked what they did with the roster. They went with, 2 veteran presence that bring, some championship pedigree to the roster, where Slasher has a world championship and, 10 plus wins. Priest is kind of in the same boat, just coming off a world championship and is the winningest player in the CDL era. So you bring 2 veteran ARs in, and Priest has a true flex. And then you get Capsidal and Snoopy, who are both just, could they have downside and could they actually end up being not that good? Absolutely. They could blow up and that could not be a good sub duo, but I think they have a very high potential. And let's be honest, when you're outside this top 4, do you want to play it safe and just consistently be 5th and always get a top 6? Or do you want to swing for the fences with a young, cracked sub duo and hope, they can become the next great thing and you have a chance to compete with the top 4? I would much rather go for the latter and swing for the fences when I'm not one of those top 4 teams.
But this team on the right day, I feel like they could win. They could win against the top 4 teams on the right day.
Absolutely. I think they could too. I won't consistently pick them, I don't think, to beat the top 4 teams. But also I will say this. Whenever we talk about this teams that seem like the guaranteed top teams, one of them always is inconsistent or fails to live up to expectations. Yeah. I'm not saying that's going to happen. I think it's hard for me to see a way that Faze, OpTic, and Toronto especially aren't the top 3 teams this year. I do think there's a world where New York struggles a little bit just because maybe the chemistry isn't as good as it was.
Yeah.
Without Priesta, I still think New York's going to be incredibly good and probably still guaranteed top 4. But it seems like all the teams that we think are guaranteed to be top teams, at least one of them always actually ends up not being.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe Boston takes that place. I just like that, yeah, like you said, on the right day, I think Capsidal and Snoopy, that's what you have to do. We talked about it last week. That's what you have to do with these not bottom teams, but teams outside the top 4. You have to put together a sub duo that their ceiling is a team that could potentially take out your Simp and Abezy, your Shotzi and Pred. And I don't think Capsidal and Snoopy by any means are on either of those duos level yet or anything, or maybe they never will be, but at least they're 2 guys that we don't know their ceiling yet.
Yeah.
Rather than 2 veterans where we've seen their peak. These 2, we haven't seen their peak yet. And could they end up sucking and not being that good? Absolutely. But I'd rather take the chance on these 2 young guys becoming superstars and then you can compete. I'd rather, fail by swinging for the fences than fail by playing it safe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I fully agree with that. I don't play scared.
Yeah, you can't. You can if you want to win.
Yeah. Like you said, but Capsidal and Snoopy, they had some moments, definitely. Capsidal and Vanguard and later this year in MW2 and Snoopy champs. So
yeah,
I like this roster.
So do I. I think it could be potentially a very good roster. What do you think the ceiling is? Do you think, you kind of mentioned it, you think they could beat some top 4 teams on the right day? Do you think their ceiling is a top 6, which would be, the first team eliminated out to the top 4? Or do you think they have potential to crack some top 4, some top 3s, maybe get into the running? I'm not going to say, do you think they'll win a major? Yes or no. But do you think they could crack into the top 4 in certain events and make some noise? Or do you think that they're probably going to fall short?
For the events or for the season leaderboard?
Maybe both. I don't know, because it definitely is different. You could crack into top 4 a few times and still finish 5th or 6th.
I mean, I could see this team definitely making to like top 4, top 3s, low key. Yeah. In tournaments, and definitely probably I'll say a top 4 finish in the standings if like you said, New York struggles.
Yeah, I agree. I think their ceiling. I think there's a world where they could crack a couple top 3s, top 4s, maybe go a little further, but it's hard to say that they'd win an event because I do like the top 4 teams a lot. But I think they could crack into some top 3s and top 4s at tournaments. I could see a world where they get 4th. I do feel like they'll still end up finishing somewhere between 4 through 6 in the standings.
Yeah,
I think that's where I see this team. I mean, and once again, that could change. Maybe some more rosters come out that we see, and we end up liking some more of the other rosters that come out a lot more. But to me, this seems like a team that will probably end up in the 4 to 6 range in the standings. And I think they'll be a pretty consistent top 6 all year with the ability to crack into top 3 or top 4 maybe a couple times.
Yep. Who knows? This team maybe could win a tournament like New York did this year.
Yeah, maybe.
I thought New York would win, and then They did.
No, people weren't putting New York as a top team going into last year, and they ended up being the undisputed best team of the MW2 season.
And I'll bet at least Priest might get one since he's the winningest player in CDL history.
Yeah, and these are Slasher and Priest that tend to always make their teams pretty darn competitive at the very least.
Yep. But for
this
what's
team
left,
all does. What do you say?
For what's left, and people say that's pretty good roster for what's left.
Yeah, and I also think the entire roster to me hinges on Snoopy because, like we said, these are two young, unproven SMGs, but we have seen a lot more of Capsidal.
Yeah.
And we've seen that he can be really good. It all hinges on Snoopy. Like, we know the talent is there. It's just a matter of if he can transition everything people say about his talent into actual gameplay and translate that into the gameplay, then this team will be very good.
Yep. Fully agree.
All right, let's talk about Minnesota. This is maybe a more polarizing roster, maybe a lot more mixed opinions on this one. This one is not confirmed, however, so can't say that, at least as of the time being, unless they confirmed it after we hit record on the podcast. This is not a confirmed roster, but the Minnesota Røkkr are apparently looking to bring on Accuracy, Awakening, Vivid, and Linz from the Awababobs roster. Linz is apparently a very, very talented young SMG. I believe French, because I thought that whole roster was French.
I think so.
So they're apparently potentially bringing on Linz and also Burns. I guess Jacob Hale tweeted this. I saw it on Reddit or something, but apparently Burns might be coming back as the GM of the Røkkr, so maybe he made this roster. Don't know. That's not confirmed yet either, but Burns from the United days could apparently be their GM and thinking about signing the Accuracy, Awakening, Vivid, Linz roster. Probably a lot more mixed opinions on this one because a lot more players we potentially don't know as much about. There's some question marks around Vivid. People have a lot of questions about Accuracy, and Linz we haven't really seen play on the pro level ever. So what are your thoughts on this team?
My thoughts on this team is I feel like Big Wake can have to fry.
Yeah. I would agree. I definitely don't feel as good as the Boston roster, that's for sure.
Yeah, this is like to me, this is like a top 6 and below.
Yeah. I think there's a world, and we know we're both Lamar stands here on this podcast, so it's kind of funny that there was like talks last week about him potentially retiring, and then he got on a roster, and I tweeted that I was hyped about it because I'll always cheer for Lamar. Whether you think he's actually good or deserving or not, I'll always cheer for him. And I think it's funny he ended up on Røkkr, who I tend to like always tell people I support a little bit because of they're like the most local of the teams in the CDL for us. But I think that this roster has high potential, but I also think they have a potentially pretty low floor. I'll say that. I think this team could have a big swing. I could see this team on the right day, making a run to a top 4, and I could also see them getting a dead last. How I see them being successful, it goes in the back of what it always is. It's Lamar. It's not an accident that in World War II, from the World War II on, when Lamar really kind of came flying into the scene again, it's not a coincidence that Lamar seems to always have a superstar player on his team. So in World War II, he has Kenny, who's viewed as arguably the best player in World War II in a lot of people's eyes, or one of the best at times. He had Kenny on his team. Then you go into BO4, he's on that Splice team, and Donnie Temp, viewed as one of the best players in the world. Lamar enabling him. You go into MW, maybe a little bit of a different story, kind of a weird year for Lamar as a whole, but he played on a good New York team, and Mac was enabled as a superstar on that roster, and he had other guys like Zoom unattached. Going to Cold War, another bit of a weird year with that Røkkr team and how everything shakes out. Whatever, there's going to be an anomaly here and there. Fast forward into his last 2 years of Vanguard and MW2 with Civ and Pred. He enables them, and what's one thing that all of his teammates say coming out of it? They all seem to love playing with him. So it's not an accident that all these players that he played with looked like the best players in the game in the years they played with him. He does enable players very well, and I'll always defend Lamar as well on that. Now, I say that while also saying Lamar definitely has his downfalls. Sometimes can get outslayed, sometimes can have some really bad maps. Where I see this roster, if they're succeeding, it's through, Lamar, great in-game leadership, still also playing very well. And then I think Big Wake and Linz frying, while Vivid's just being super aggressive and impactful on the map. Dropping maybe a 0.9, but being super aggressive. It seems like maybe Vivid, super aggressive on the front lines, Lamar doing the dirty work in the back lines, while Wake and Linz just fry out. Where I see this team being unsuccessful, almost the Seattle Surge formula.
Yep.
Accuracy and Vivid really, really struggling, kind of similar to Accuracy and Mac. Wake and Linz just having to do it all. And, it's another Shaq and Kobe type situation, and probably a downgrade because I think probably at this point we have to say Sib and Pred are much better than Wake and Linz just because we haven't seen much of Linz.
I would agree with that statement. No, this roster from Linz should be good, like you said. Vivid just scares me because he's so inconsistent. He'll have he'll go 20-10 one game, then he'll go triple negative the next game.
Yeah,
it's just so hard to tell with Vivid.
He can be a really good player, and I mean, shoot, another one of our biases has to come through. Vivid, to my knowledge, is the only COD pro from Wisconsin, so some of our bias has to come in for the boy Vivid there.
Yep.
But yeah, I think this is a team with a very high ceiling and a very low floor. I don't want to make, when I said they can make a top 4, I don't want people to be like, oh my God, he thinks Røkkr is a top 4 team. I don't think that. I think there's a world where on the right weekend, this team can make a run to top 4, just like Seattle. I see this team being a lot like the Seattle with maybe less of a ceiling. I don't really see them winning events like Seattle could potentially, but if they made it to a top 4, I'm not going to be shocked. If they're on a Sunday and get eliminated in 4th place, I'm not going to be shocked, but I'm also not going to be shocked if they start and lose their first match and get dead last. That also won't surprise me.
Yeah. It's literally like Seattle Surge, but just less talent.
Yeah. So I do think this team will be, unless, we might see the other rosters come out and maybe things change, but I think if this is the roster they go with, I do think this team has potential to make champs. I think they're going to be fighting for a 7th or 8th seed. I think that's probably where they end up. I feel like in the standings, they end on a good end, they end in 6th. On the bad end, I think they could end up below 8th, but I think this team's target range would probably be 6 to 8. In all likelihood. Yeah. Could they finish lower? Sure, but I think their ceiling is probably 6th, and their floor, I'd say their floor is 10th. I don't think this team would be all the way to the bottom.
Yeah. I agree. And I'm pretty sure Agassi doesn't. I don't think he makes chance almost every year.
Yes, CDL era I can't think of.
I think.
I can't remember exactly what happened. I don't think he was on the Røkkr roster. I think he was in the bench technically for Cold War champs. Unless I could just completely be remembering it wrong, but I don't think he was active for Cold War champs. Because I swear after the lineup and everything, he ended up getting benched later in the year.
I think so too.
Yeah, because their roster champs was what? I think it was Major Maniac, Priest, Attach, and Standy.
Yeah.
I think Lamar was on the bench.
Major Maniac, so typical.
Yeah, I knew you were going to say that when we said
someone pick him up.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, and the other thing, I didn't see a lot about this because, like I said, I was on vacation, very busy every day, basically from Wednesday through Sunday, so I didn't see as much Twitter news, but I did see that there were a bunch of layoffs at version 1/Røkkr. I saw one of the people that was laid off was Midnight, an absolute OG, one of the most OG members of the entire Call of Duty community, has been around literally almost since the beginning of when Call of Duty content was a thing. And she did some fantastic work at Røkkr. I guess I don't technically know, but I have to believe that her mind for the way the Call of Duty community and the gaming community works is probably a very large reason as to why the Røkkr are so popular and did so well at growing a fan base.
Yeah,
is because of her extreme knowledge that she has in the space. So, as much as I support Røkkr, I know finances are tough, and a lot of esports organizations have been laying off. I do believe that is kind of an L to get rid of Midnight, because I think she has immense knowledge, and more knowledge than probably most people in the world. She's probably one of the top minds for the esports space in the entire world and how things work in the gaming space. She has basically been around since the beginning.
She gets it.
Yeah. So that is an L, unfortunately, for Røkkr. But with the layoffs, it's tough. We hope, once again, we've been saying this way too much, but we hope everybody lands on their feet. Yeah, it sucks to keep talking about, but like always, we hope everybody lands on their feet and is able to find jobs that they enjoy swiftly after the layoffs. But super unfortunate that this is the state we're in esports. That it seems like every podcast we have to wish people that were laid off well. I wish we didn't have to do it, but got to mention it again for the V1 and Røkkr employees that were laid off.
Who knows? Maybe Midnight will come back to OpTic.
Maybe. That'd be awesome. Come back home to where things really kicked off for her way back in the day.
Yeah. I'm trying to think when she joined. I don't I remember like Black Ops 2, but I don't think.
I think she was like literally one of the first members. I think she was even before I really watched Call of Duty content. She was around.
Yeah, I don't even.
Also, like,
I just remember Black Ops 2.
yeah, it also kind of sucks though because like I mean, like I said, I don't know all the employees that work for every organization. I could be missing them, but I think she, to my knowledge at least, is like one of the few like females in upper management. Like one of the few women in upper management at these CDL teams. So it sucks to see her go because it's nice to have women represented in upper management. Maybe there are more that I don't know about, but it's nice to see women represented in upper management at these CDL, not only CDL, but just esports orgs in general. So, I mean, shoot, hopefully she just gets a job if she's looking for one and she still wants to keep doing this. Hopefully she gets a job at another org and get towards the top of their org and start running things because she knows what she's doing.
Yeah. She definitely does. That's why their Røkkr's pretty big.
Yeah, that's why they're so good at cultivating that local fan base, especially.
Yep.
I think she also moved there. I think because I swear she's like from Minnesota or from that area too. Because I remember she was like a big Vikings fan.
Yeah, I think you're right.
So that also really sucks for her too, because I think that's the main reason she was there. She wanted to move back to Minnesota. So we'll see what she does. I'm sure whatever she does, it will be successful because that's basically been her story as a creator in the esports scene. Is basically everything she touches has some great success.
Yeah, she'll be fine.
Yeah. Then kind of two more random things. The first team for Hecz throwback tourney, which it's Black Ops 2 again, I think this year, was announced. A nasty sounding team. Scump, Karma, Shotzzy, and Pred were announced. And unless there's been another one, I believe that was the first team announced for Hecz throwback tourney. I think it's for Movember again, which is like a men's mental health and suicide awareness organization, which is the one thing I wanted to mention too. I told Brock I was going to mention this quick on the podcast, and I think we'll just mention it quick. Brock hasn't ever watched the show. I know we talked about that, but it sounds like there's some news that came out on Twitter today. I want to make sure I don't miss it, but it sounds like Agnes Cloud, who was on Euphoria, an actor, passed away today. I'm not sure exactly what, but it sounded like there was some mental health things going on there. So like Kyle and I always talked about it in the past. We mentioned it like randomly when, stuff like this would happen, and probably didn't mention it enough as much as we would like to, because it was a cause that both Kyle and I heavily supported. And I know Brock would be on the same page, but that sucks to see. Euphoria is one of my favorite shows of all time. If not my favorite show, it's right up there. And that sucks to see. And I saw there was something going on in their family where his dad had passed away like a week ago, and he was really struggling through that. So once again, anything with mental health is very important, and it seems like it only gets talked about, at least on my timeline, when something tragic like this happens. But that's not the only time it's important. It's important at all times. So if you're struggling, reach out to somebody. Somebody will always be there for you. It's unfortunate, but we're also feeling sorry for their family, because it sounds like his dad passed away like last week, I think it was, and then he passed away. So I can't imagine.
That's just tough on the family.
Jeez. Yeah, I can't imagine what their family is going through. Like as a brother, I have one sibling. I can't imagine if I lost a sibling and a parent in basically the same week. That is unbelievable. So keep them in your thoughts. That is tough to hear. A great actor and a great show, and 25 years old, so basically exactly our age.
Yep. Young.
Very, very young, crazy to think about. So want to give a shout out to that. And if you're struggling, reach out to somebody. Kyle and I were always for that, and Brock and I will continue to be for that. And go support Hecz tournament when it comes out, because it's I believe again it's for Movember. That's what he always does for men's mental health. So grow your mustaches out for that tournament. That's like their big thing, and keep supporting the mental health community. And if anybody listening to the podcast needs help, reach out to us. But yeah, Hecz tournament coming up. Excited to watch some Black Ops 2, and this should be a fun roster. Scump, Karma, Shotzzy, Pred, and also a very vibey roster to play an off-season tournament with.
Just shoot the shit.
Yeah, that'll be a very fun team, and probably a pretty nasty team.
Yeah. I wonder what teams are going to be showing up with.
I thought, what did I see today? It was like Nadeshot was looking for a team, and Hecz. I'll go pull up Hecz Twitter quick and see if I can see it. It was a really fun team. I want to say it was like a complexity type team, like maybe an Aches Crim 6. I can't exactly remember. I know like Big T said he was taking this year off or something and told Karma to fill in or something like that. I know Big T just had a child recently. But where is it? Hecz said something.
Did Big T win it last year or?
Yeah, with Scump and I can't remember who else.
Is this it? I don't remember, honestly.
Okay, I was kind of right. It was like a complexity style team. Like Nature was tweeting about the red dot ballot champs instead of the HBR might have been the move or something. And then Hecz said we got to get you back on the sticks one of these days. And then Nature was like, what's good with the BO2 throwback? And then Clay responded and said, me, Crim6, and Hecz need one. Somebody was like, why is TP not the fourth? And apparently TP is going to be out of town that weekend. So apparently maybe another team of three might be Clay, Crim, and Hecz. That'd be kind of funny to see Nadeshot join that team. That'd be kind of fun.
Yeah,
the whole veteran squad, like the old rivalry back in the day, Nadeshot versus Complexity. That'd be kind of fun if Nadeshot went and joined that team.
That would be funny.
I would be very. I mean, it'd be a very entertaining team to watch as well. So hopefully Nadeshot goes and joins that team of three. Apparently it's the last team of three, so I think all the other teams are set. That team's just looking for a fourth.
Ooh, okay.
So I'm sure we'll hear something about that soon. I think it was just a 4-team little mini tournament they're going to throw on. I think they're throwing on like a Smash Melee tournament and some other ones. I don't exactly know what it was. I can't remember.
Yeah. The one they're playing Black Ops 2, you said, right?
Yeah.
The one they should do, I don't know, not this year, but in the future, they should do a throwback Black Ops 4 with 5v5.
Yeah, that would be funny. Bring it back 5v5, and yeah, that would be funny, actually. I think he said he wanted to keep it on Black Ops 2 just because it was like the easiest one to set up or something, and like it is like the kind of default. Like when you think of competitive Call of Duty, it's kind of the default game for us. So I don't know, probably with ease, but yeah, I would love if somehow in the off season it could become like a monthly or bi-monthly event if we're gonna have these stupid 6 months off seasons where ideally he'd keep throwing tournaments. But I also know that throwing a LAN tournament like this is probably a lot to plan. It would be pretty stressful to plan like 3 himself.
Yeah. Definitely by himself, yeah.
Yeah, so we'll be on the lookout for that tournament. Last thing we have, it kind of goes with the other stuff we talked about. Octane, apparently, he tweeted out that he thinks we could potentially be in for like the greatest season of all are shaping out. And we'll see if that happens. And it sounds like he said, maybe if the game cooperates with us. So we know with Call of Duty, the game doesn't necessarily cooperate with us, but hopefully it does.
I'm praying. That's good.
Yeah. Good. We're hoping and praying the game's actually good. All it has to do is just be a decent game, and we know these teams will make it entertaining for us.
Yeah. And personally, I would love to play a good game.
Well, yeah.
Other than MW2 cheese that I don't even play that anymore because I'm just so sick and tired of it.
Yeah, and you know what? From what we've heard, there's potentially dead silence in the game at all times, and maybe slide canceling to add some entertainment for watching into the game. And it sounds like red dots might be back. From what Scump said, it sounds like maybe the time to kill could be a little longer. So if all those things are true, those are at least steps in the right direction to maybe have a better game.
Yeah, if we need that one thing on there, dead silence for sure, though.
Yeah, that's number one. More than red dots, in my opinion, by far.
Yep.
Obviously, I want both, but if I had to choose one, I'm choosing dead silence all day, every day.
Yep. I don't want to deal with sound EQ again.
No.
I used it. Good cheeser.
Yeah, it is awful to play against. Not fun to watch, and yeah, we want people that actually have to have awareness.
I just made the bad players just good, which it just doesn't. It's so stupid.
And it made having good awareness and completely just not valuable trait because anybody on a PC could have amazing awareness because they could hear everything. So having good awareness and knowing timings basically didn't matter in this game. And, being able to hit a good route and a good pinch didn't matter at all because if you hit the pinch, by the time you got close enough to, make a play, they all heard you running unless you had enough deady to make it there.
Yeah.
They heard you running and they would just turn around. So yeah, that sounds very important.
Yeah, you could only hit a pinch flank. That sounds 10 seconds last?
Yeah.
Unless you get a kill.
Yeah, so yeah, unless you got a kill, but then at that point they also know you're behind them. So yeah, it's just an absolute mess.
Yeah. Yep.
Excited to see if Octane's awards can come true though. If we actually get a decent game, Seems like that every year. As long as we get like even a decent game, we can make the season a historic one. I feel like MW2 in terms of viewership and everything was a pretty successful season, and you could argue is maybe the worst game we've ever had.
Yeah,
it's up there.
Vanguard's a pretty good game though.
Yeah, okay. I think that's enough for the episode.
Sorry, I had to say that.
I knew you were gonna say it. That's gonna do it for this one though. Got you guys out maybe a little shorter than usual, but if you guys enjoyed this one, be sure to leave a like, comment, and subscribe. If you're on the audio platforms, drop that follow, drop that 5-star review. I can't remember the exact name. I don't have Twitter up right now, but somebody did point out to me. I don't know what happened with the episode, but it glitched and only like showed 1 second on Spotify, and I was about to head on a vacation. So shout out to you. I can pull up my Twitter right now and get the actual name. But my mind is I just got back from vacation. I feel like I have a fuzzy brain. Who was it? I gotta find it. Gotta find the tweet.
PA Butters?
Yeah, PA Butters. Shout out to you. It sounds like what did I see? He's overseas somewhere. I can't remember. Sounds like he's maybe an EU listener, but he tweeted at me like right before I was about to head on vacation and was like, "Hey, just went to listen to the new podcast on Spotify. I noticed it's only 1 second long. Thought you might not have noticed, and I did not notice. Didn't know that. So shout out to you because you saved the audio listeners and got the podcast fixed. For whatever reason, it literally just uploaded like a 1 second clip with no audio, and just didn't upload the full episode. So I had to go on and I tried to fix it like multiple times. It didn't work, and it finally went through. So shout out to you. You saved the audio listeners and you helped us get the podcast on there. Otherwise, there's been no audio form this week. So thank you guys for the support. We appreciate you watching. We'll see you next week, hopefully with some more news or figure out a segment to do. So we appreciate you guys. Thank you so much for watching. Like we said, if you need help, you're struggling, reach out to somebody. It can be us. It can be a close friend, a family member. Reach out to somebody. We appreciate you all watching, and we will see you in the next one.